Yes, sir.
You know how I sometimes do musical intros?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to rhyme the movie name with a song everyone will know. Well, this time I thought all day and all night, because we already tried to record this once, and due to technical issues, we're doing it again.
Did you put your thinking hat on?
And I just can't shake one sound-alike song. Can I sing it for you and see if you can identify the song? Because what's different is it's unlikely people will know this song, but I'm wondering if you
I probably won't. But go ahead.
Christine, I don't know what you do to me. The best that you can do for me is murder all my friends.
No, I don't know what you're doing, but I mean,
it's also it was really flat and not the right melody.
I bet if I heard it, I would know what that Christine bit is. Because that's unique. But I bet I haven't even heard this song.
It's Maureen, a song by an incredibly underrated band, The Fountains of Wayne, or in this case, The Fountains of Pain.
I thought it would be The Fountains of Wayne. It felt like a Fountains of Wayne song, and I know you love Fountains of Wayne, and I'm not a big Fountainhead, you know?
The Fountainhead, right?
The Fountainhead, yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. Don't do that.
Let no man control your ambition. Hey, so we are talking about Christine. This is The Kings of King. And that was your Fountains of Wayne recommendation for the month. So, hey, give a listen. Out of State Plates is a good place to start. Anywho, we're talking about a 1983 film based on a novel by Stephen King, which of course is the purview of this podcast. I'm Michael Swaim.
I'm Abe Epperson.
And Christine was directed by John Carpenter.
Hey.
So he's spiritually in the room with us as well. And as I said, this is our second run through. But you know, vroom vroom. I'm excited. I'm excited again. This movie's way better than I expected, right, Abe?
There's I guess a carsploitation subgenre of horror movies called the evil car subgenre. And this is crazy because some people argue it started with like I guess the 1981 Evil Dead. But I think it even predates that.
That car wasn't evil.
It wasn't evil, but it like...
Or is there a sequence where it fights someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's where it's like alive.
So like the idea of using film grammar and tricks to make a car hurt someone.
My film knowledge on car horror movies is pretty shoddy, I'll be honest. But like there's definitely been a lot of films that have come out.
Well, Maximum Overdrive is another Stephen King that's going to come up. Yeah.
Right. And I think that Christine is like kind of the cream of the crop, right? Like, how good can that subgenre really be?
Yeah, it's the room in the room.
Yeah, so I think this is the one. This is the one you need for that concept.
Well, I would argue the Futurama episode, The Honkening, or Honking, I always forget. It should be The Honkening, I feel like.
I think it's just The Honking.
It may be the best, but, because it's like The Howling. I get it. But if you count that, I guess you're saying films. But that also brings to mind, while we're on it, the easiest way to describe this movie in a nutshell, I think, is you think it's the Futurama episode where he turns into an evil car, The Honking, but it's not. It's the Futurama episode where the ship is sentient and it falls in love with Bender and starts killing all his friends. Now you know everything you need to know about the plot of Christine.
I love how your brain considers all story just like, what Futurama episode is it?
That's right. Well, because they took the sort of the Simpsons eye and turned it to, we're going to Rolodex every sci-fi trope ever. They basically did. Almost every sci-fi thing you can find that's a Futurama. But we digress. Should we get into the segment so we can actually break down what happens in this? So we can look under the hood.
No, that's not it, though.
No?
That's not the name of the segment, but I like the enthusiasm.
That's what we'll be doing, metaphorically.
So yeah. So this is called Under the Dome.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
There's that dome.
This is the elevator synopsis of the movie, just to get you all acclimated if you haven't seen it. I don't know why you're listening to this, you crazy people.
No, I think I could imagine definitely listening to this episode because you like Kings of King. God bless you. And not watching Christine because it's a 1983 evil car movie. And you might be like, I bet that one's not that good. I'll just listen to the boys break it down and hear what funny bibbles come up.
I bet that one's not that good.
That's why I led the episode with like, I think you should watch this. Yeah. Which is, for a guy whose initials are JC and his last name is Carpenter, he delivered unto us a good movie. No, my point is that
true craftsman. Yeah,
he is a true craftsman, and I always underestimate John Carpenter. I'm like, yeah, hokey horror director, blah blah blah. Let's watch this thing, and I always find myself thinking very pointedly, John Carpenter knows how to put a movie together. It's Carpenter-like. He puts it together like a good chest of drawers. It's just like solid. It's solid. Solid movie.
Man, we can't get on. I don't think he's hokey. I think he's one of the best filmmakers ever.
Well, personally. In a low-key way, though. Do you know what I mean, or am I wrong?
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think he's sneaky with how good he is.
Right. Well, because you love The Thing's your favorite horror movie.
He's picture perfect when it gets to like the mechanics of stuff. And he's inventive, as we'll find out later. We'll talk a little bit more about how this one, like when we talk about like technical feats, in terms of for the scale of movies, we talk about things like lightsabers or Star Wars and miniatures, or we talk about Avatar and the digital age and like
we do
compositing.
It's all we
These
talk
are things
about,
that,
isn't it?
It's all we talk about. But no one ever brings up Carpenter as a guy who actually found some very intelligent ways to shoot sequences just out of necessity and knocked it out of the park.
I think people do bring up Halloween and The Thing, but that's about it. Mm-hmm. And in The Thing's case, it's more the effects team. I mean, under his stewardship, but the effects team really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Regardless, should we cram this car into an elevator, a feat in its own right?
Yeah. So it kind of starts in 1957. Our evil car is being assembled, and it's
which is interesting because I'm sorry to interrupt so fast, but that kind of indicates something that I think does bear out that's interesting. It's kind of the Cars movie.
Yes.
It's like a biopic of the car.
Yeah.
Which is like great because I think
the car, the murderous
if you're going
car.
to use film tricks to anthropomorphize an inanimate object, you got to do that trick from that classic paper documentary. You got to follow the object in interesting ways because objects, what's interesting about them is they outlast humans and they lead different lives. They move from, situation to situation. They trade owners. And I think, anyway, I'm gushing about the movie too much. So please continue.
That is an amazing reference. You just referenced a little scene, Chris Marker documentary for the French National Library. That's just as the paper doc. That's funny. Only true cinephiles will really get that one. That's a deep cut. But yeah, so it's our Christine is a 1958 Plymouth Fury. And it kind of starts with a real quick sequence because it's over credits. That line worker is inspecting the engine and the hood's up, and then for no reason whatsoever, it falls on his hand, and he's mauled by the car. So that's like image one of the car. Also, it's the only red car on the line.
There's no explanation for why.
It's just like
I just got the Fury connection. Of course, King picked Fury. That's a good model
Fury,
to pick. But why are there 6 white identical Plymouths on this assembly line? One is naughty red.
Naughty red. That's absolutely right. And then
go ahead.
Another worker, foreman, kind of comes in and inspects the car, I guess. I don't know what he's doing because he's going inside the car, closing the door, and he's smoking a cigar. And he it jump cuts or it cuts discontinuity cut. At the end of the shift, another person approaches, opens the door, and he falls out, and he's dead.
Yeah,
So-
this is a scene that made me briefly underestimate. I think it set a low bar for my expectations on how hokey the movie was going to be, because it's honestly the least clear maneuver in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Because they do an insert shot of the cigar ash falling to Christine's seat as if there's going to be like a burn issue, which does not resolve. And then the guy's just dead. And you can assume Christine magically gave him a heart attack because Christine magically makes people choke. It's like within the car can make whatever happen. But
Right.
I still found the film grammar not clear or very effective in a way that does not match the rest of the movie. So I think that was the 1-2 punch. You always have a nice film going experience when the very first scene makes you go, oh, this is going to suck. And then you go, no, this was good.
Yeah,
It's always fun, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely one of the weaker sequences in terms of making you understand what's going on. But I don't think it's supposed to be in service of that. I think it's supposed to just kind of tell you, hey, something's up with this car, because it's already a big offer in 1983 to be like, imagine like an evil car. You know, it's like Stephen King's knocking out Cujo's and Christine's. It's available.
They would be a good Freddy versus Jason situation, Cujo versus Christine, because he hates cars.
That's true, but I think it's pretty one-sided since every battle between a dog and a car ever
Has gone one way. Yeah, you rarely see the dog come out of that one.
Except that one time in 1985.
When that dog slowly
shit.
ate a car piece by piece, and the car was trying to get away. It took 6 days.
Yeah, it took 6 days to
We
eat.
salute that good pupper.
Yeah, but so that's kind of the opening sequence, which is of note because that's not in the book. But anyway.
Yeah, it literally is an opening sequence. It's like getting handed a business card that says, there is an evil car. And you're like, okay, all right, I understand the concept. Moving on.
Yeah, exactly. So 21 years later, it's 1978, and we introduce our protagonist, Arnie, who's kind of a awkward, unpopular teen, kind of a nerd, a loser.
Loser.
Yeah, and he's got a friend who's like the popular kid in school, the like quarterback of the football team, and his name is Dennis. And they they're just good friends. And we even see Dennis protect Arnie because we see like kind of one of the first images at the school is that there's a group of three to four bullies. I think one of them runs away at the beginning of the scene, but they like pull a knife on Arnie.
Yeah,
and
there's John Travolta bully, and there's Jonah Hill bully, and then forgettable third bully.
Yeah, it's real. It reminds me of like History of Violence. Like it's real basic kind of teenage drama bully, which is like, I don't like you.
We gotta ring the bell for the Stephen King bully with a switchblade alert. Because it's classic Stephen King, right? And I will say something I thought I'd found very fresh was that relationship you mentioned where Dennis is the big man on campus jock, but he just happens to be also a very nice guy, which of course happens in life. I knew that guy in high school. And so I love that the jock at this school is nice. So the bully's just some random other kid who's clearly 35 years old, but he's in a tight t-shirt, so he's 17, whatever. But man, you're right. It goes hard as far as like, and this is a classic Stephen King maneuver. We see this in Stand By Me and It in the flashbacks. And Stranger Things. Oh, wait, that's not, never mind. The bullies are not fucking around, man. They're gonna like carve their name in your flesh and shit. Yeah.
It gets very real very fast. So we kind of, obviously have built sympathy for Arnie.
Sure. Well, before we leave that sequence, speaking of getting real, just have to mention they tattle and the teacher, commits assault on the bully.
Yeah.
I know it's a different time, but dude, if you saw a viral video on Twitter the teacher grabs this kid, Buddy
Runs him
Ripperton,
against
by
the
the
wall.
shirt, shakes him, and it's like, you don't fucking talk to me that fucking way. Shut your mouth. It's like, it's hard. It goes hard. Okay, continue.
Yeah, the guy's seen war, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, our two main characters finally meet when Arnie and Dennis are walking home to their respective homes, I guess. And they stop by and they see a junkyard owned by one George LeBay, and displayed right in front is an old dilapidated Fury. Christine is sitting there, and Arnie is immediately attracted to it. He goes over and he's like, how much is it? And they work out a deal for like $250 or something like that. And George LeBay kind of goes into that his late brother, Roland, originally owned it, gives some details about the car, the fact that it's named Christine. There's a few more details that we learn here that become relevant later. Basically, Arnie doesn't really have much agency in his life. His parents are very controlling, and they won't even when he does buy the car, they won't even let him keep the car at the house. So Arnie has now purchased the car and now keeps it in and restores it at a do-it-yourself garage and junkyard owned by Will Darnell, who becomes up later. So that's like act one. They're like setting up the pieces. And now the car is purchased, and Arnie's life starts to slowly improve while he's working on the car. So we think.
I guess. It's more of a lateral move. He slowly turns into a cookie cutter rebel without a cause 50s rockabilly douchebag, which is it's delightful choice. Big choice.
It's super funny to say it like that, and you're absolutely right. That is what it is.
He gets a pompadour. He gets a red driving jacket.
That's the eventuality. That's
jacket?
Like you're like jumping from like
you gotta
Jeff
boil
Goldblum to Brumblefly.
You gotta boil the frog on this, or people won't accept it. Yeah,
right. When you watch it, it's not as like, well, that's weird, but it is. He does do that. It was an active choice made by the filmmakers, because I think it's more of the time that Christine was alive. So we're just seeing Christine's influence. And there's a cool thing that they do is that when he starts working on it and they start driving around, there's a shot of the odometer that we saw at the beginning.
I love
when he buys it. And it's like almost 1 million. It's like 900,000 something.
93,000.
Yeah. And and then as the movie progresses, the odometer goes down.
Which they don't call out. No one goes, the odometer's gone down. No. So I liked how subtle it was. I do think people could miss it. And man, I just love that, because I think, being honest, as like at Cracked, let's say, or as sketch writers, specifically in the sphere of comedy, your brain is sort of becomes wired to do what I call Rolodexing. Other comedians don't call it that. That was just a term I used at Cracked. But meaning, if someone goes, you got to write a sketch about an evil car, you think about, what are all the famous cars? Kit from Knight Rider, what if he was evil? What are all the famous things that are evil? Satan, could there be Satan and the car? Hitler car? This is called like, you just go through everything and you think of stuff by combining the elements and seeing what connects to those elements. I never would think of the odometer goes in reverse when it sucks someone's life force out, like a vampire car. Right. That's such a good way to do that. The odometer goes down. I love it. It's fabulous. Ding dong, darling.
Yeah. It's that. I love that. And you're right. It's subtle. I think credit to King for conceiving of it. And credit to Carpenter for like kind of bringing it home and not making it like, oh, look how cool. That's kind of one of the things that Carpenter is really good at. Arnie is now he's losing his glasses. He's dressing a little cleaner at this point in the story.
Not like a nerd lost his glasses, meaning he no longer needs glasses. Sorry, that sounded confusing.
Also becoming arrogant and paranoid, specifically when it comes to the car itself. Like when people don't like it, or people are like, man, that was a bad decision to buy that car.
I love the interchange where I'm paraphrasing, but his new hot girlfriend, Lee Cap, is like, he's like, you're acting weird because you're jealous of my car, right? And she's like, I hate your car. Why? Because you say stuff like that. Like, this right now is not pleasant. You're like, yeah. He's like, you think it's weird how much I talk about the car, don't you? And it's like, I do now. Yeah, you're doing it right now.
I mean, you admit it's funny that you just keep harping on the car, right?
So obsessed with the car, like Gollum with the ring, for sure.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. He learns, there's a few more scenes that he learns a little bit more information about the car. One through Arnie's mom, where Roland actually committed suicide in the car.
Not only that, but his daughter, Roland committed suicide in the car, as did his wife, and his daughter choked to death in the car.
Yeah. So everyone keeps dying in this car.
Which leads to Dennis going to the old man he purchased the car from, LeBay, and I think this is funny just because in the next sequence I would understand, because in the very next sequence the car does something magic in Dennis's presence, and he's like, this car is possessed. But I just want to point out, at this point in reality, he just thinks something is fucked up about that car, and he knows people died in it. And so he goes to an old man and shakes him down and is like, you fucked us. You sold us this fucked up car that you knew someone died in. He's basically like publicly shouting at a grieving old man whose brother died 6 weeks ago. I just think it's as if he knows the car is magic already, which he doesn't. Please continue.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny interaction, but yeah. So the big thing, one of the big next steps is that during a football game, which Dennis is the quarterback again, Christine rolls up and now is completely cherry, as they say. Completely looks like a new car. And Arnie comes out, and while he's in the huddle, he notices that, as you mentioned, Lee steps out, and they're kind of like, that's how we learn that I guess they're dating or something, because they're kissing. And we knew from a previous scene at the lockers that Dennis is kind of sweet on Lee. Everyone is. She's like the, like most attractive woman in school.
She's the exotic new girl. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also a thing that never paid off that was kind of odd. Dennis blatantly ignores this other girl who's clearly in love with him.
Right.
I guess she just gets snubbed, and that's that. Because
I think it's all in the service of Lee. I think it's to show that Lee
It's to build up that like Lee is the it girl.
Everyone wants Lee, like she's just amazing, so that we can have two. It's kind of interesting because they have a point of contention, like, oh, well, let me go in order. So what happens is, while that he's distracted by looking at that, he gets tackled, and it like ends his career as a football player. Like,
which we get the impression Christine did. So I guess her magic can reach even outside the bounds of the car somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their kind of first meeting, which is a few scenes later, but just to wrap up this arc here, they even talk about like, oh, I saw that you're with Lee now. And he's like, yep, it's kind of awesome and all that. What's crazy is that, once again, usually, like as we said with this movie before, it's already peculiar, I guess, especially in 1983.
Considering it's 1983, I think it's actually way ahead of its time. Like we talk about movies like Tyre, that movie where the evil Tyre kills people, as like, can you believe how imaginative that someone thought of making an inanimate horror killer? Dude, Christine, it's really fresh. It's surprisingly fresh for being from 1983.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's basically like, it's built genres out of the insane concepts that are at play. But I thought it was ahead of its time, like as you mentioned, that you have like a jock and a, it's not a jock and a nerd, I guess. That's not typical for Stephen King, but usually it's the losers club and the losers only. But it exists, and that's fine. Also, they kind of dangle in front of us a typical teen drama, especially high school deal, is that if like someone is with someone,
the girl comes between them,
and there's a feeling of a love triangle, or at least someone is, like has a crush on that guy or girl, that will come to a head. That will cause strife in their relationship. Or
at least a handy on the bus.
And once again, credit to Dennis. He's, kind of hurt about it, but doesn't isn't an asshole about it. He doesn't make Arnie feel like, screw you, Arnie, for taking my girl or anything like that, which is very well trodden territory, especially in the 80s. In fact, Arnie in that conversation at his hospital bed is much more of an asshole because he's like not accepting that there's any feelings that Dennis might have. In addition, Dennis he can't use his like leg anymore, like basically for a bit. And also his career is over if he ever wanted to be a high school football player or if he ever wanted to be a football player. So it's
Dennis is a great guy. Well, and this is another thing that's very interesting about the film. Did you notice the film does not have a traditional story arc in terms of the protagonist is the arc and we follow them and their arc goes up and down. It kind of is a relay race where the car is the main character and then Arnie is the main character, but then Arnie morphs into the antagonist and Dennis takes over as main character. And then I would argue at the end,
Dennis becomes the antagonist.
Lee almost rivals for main character. It becomes this weird ensemble piece where each character takes the spotlight for a phase of the movie almost.
Yeah, they kind of do-si-do.
As we care less about Arnie, we care about him, but we're like, okay, he's evil. So when we see him, he's going to do evil shit. We phase into... Now we're like, is Dennis okay? What's his plan? What's Dennis going to do? Very interesting.
Yeah. And that means that everyone has to kind of have the same beats, I guess, except for Arnie, because Arnie just has to become one with the car.
Well, everyone has to slowly be like, is this really, this car's evil? I think this car is fucking possessed.
So for Lee, that is the next scene, which is... Lee and Arnie go to a movie theater,
a Richard Pryor movie, baby.
Yeah, and Christine's windshield wipers stop working, and they're at a date, and he goes out to fix it. And Lee, who has already voiced that she's like, I don't really care for this car. I can't recall the reason why, but this one is why soon enough, because she starts to choke on her hamburger, and the radio turns on once again. Which is kind of how Christine talks to humans in a way, because more on that later.
It picks songs with lyrics that are appropriate to the moment, which is great.
A typical trick,
fun
but
trope.
Very cool, very fun. And she starts to choke on her hamburger, and so her life is threatened, and it's very obvious just from watching.
And I forget what song it plays, but it's like a Buddy Holly song with lyrics like, I'm gonna kill you, bitch. You're gonna choke on a burger. It's like about what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's people. Wait, what is it? It's
every
your mind.
Day
it says your mind.
Choking on a burger. Okay, anyway.
I'm an evil car and you're gonna die. All right. Back to task. So yeah. Obviously, that goes as we'd expect.
Incidentally,
Arnie is like
crazy that it then cuts to him dropping her off at home.
Yeah.
And her saying, I never want to ride in this car again. Why'd she even let the car take her home? I would not get in that car, period.
Because it's very clear that she felt like while that happened
car
with
is
the
alive.
light and everything,
yeah.
She felt something. It wasn't just a visual experience. Like she felt like an evil presence come from the car. So she's totally convinced at this point. And like the doors locked themselves and kept Arnie from opening the door. So now
she and Dennis are like, Arnie is under the persuasion of the car. The car's evil. We got to save our friend and destroy the car. So they're a team.
Yeah. So the next scene is that the school bully who we saw from the beginning, Buddy, who's like kind of the ringleader, is being expelled after
because of drawing the knife on them earlier in the film. So he blames them.
He and his bully pals go to the junkyard / garage, do-it-yourself garage, and they vandalize Christine.
They vandalize. Are you just going to say vandalize? They wreck Christine up like it is a Street Fighter bonus level, dude. They wreck the shit out of Christine, and one of them shits on the dashboard.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a good scene.
And then the next scene is Arnie sees it as well as Lee sees it.
Midpoint.
And they're like, oh no. And then later that night, Arnie goes to Christine and says, all right, let's see what you got, basically, because he has a connection, a psychic connection with Christine.
He is beginning. This is we get the impression that this is the first time he's seen it do magic himself, personally.
Literally does magic.
Because he says, but like, you can tell he's suspected for a long time the car is somehow magic, but to realize it's alive, he comes in and he goes, okay, show me. And the car does living shit. The car moves around. It restores
itself, and we'll just leave it at that. It regenerates.
It becomes cherry again.
Because I'll explain how they exactly did that, which is kind of what makes it's kind of visually like. I will tell you, if you haven't seen this movie, 1983, watch it. The power of just like simple film tricks. Yeah, and it's just a trick. So then what happens is then we get the feeling that Christine, once that's done, now the bow's broken in terms of the narrative for the most part. Christine now can drive around, and the belief has been suspended, so to speak. So Christine like basically
hunts down the bullies, kills them one at a time. And they do a really cool thing where Christine's windows are now tinted, and it actually creates because as we said, Arnie leaves the spotlight, and I found it really effective how the moral question becomes, so you're like, right, Christine's going to kill people, obviously, by crushing them. She's a car. But you idiot. But you start wondering, is Arnie in the car? Is Arnie like fully on board with what Christine's doing, or is Christine driving around at night of her own accord? And the movie withholds that information. I just think that's a great withhold. It works really well.
Right.
So she hunts down the bullies, playing
she kills a bunch of people.
Cool songs. She kills a lot of people,
the owner of the garage, Darnell, because he's like when she drives back and parks at her home, I guess, he starts asking questions because he thinks that Arnie's in it. So she kills him too. And now we have the police. The police is on the case because people are just dying, and most people see this car driving around. So Arnie's obviously implicated.
Oh, right. That's the other thing is Arnie has to be like, the car doesn't seem to have the desire to not get caught. It doesn't give a shit about that. Right. So Arnie is quickly, even though he's evil, he also is like, to the cop, you see him break and be like, dude, I really don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was an asshole earlier. That doesn't mean I killed these people. Arnie, at the same time that he is fully evil, is also not incentivized to let Christine commit the murders, because everyone Christine kills, they're like, okay, a seventh person has grill marks all over their body that match your car. Like, we think you did it, obviously. Yeah. So he's got cop problems. Yeah. Meanwhile, Dennis and Lee, through their shared trauma, think they're falling in love with each other, but it's just an infatuation, in my opinion. But according to movie logic, they fall in love. And the car, if you've seen the Futurama scene, the honking, this is where it's really on the nose. This is where they square off in the car warehouse, just like in Futurama. Lee and Dennis plan to crush Christine with a bulldozer after luring Christine to the Fix-It shop, which they do. And by, I think, going and carving in the hood, meet us at the Fix-It shop. And Christine hates when you fuck with her paint job. Right. So Christine's like, yeah, I'll kill you. I don't give a shit. Comes to the shop. Unfortunately, catches Lee while she's outside the bulldozer. So it becomes a game of car is chasing Lee. Dennis is chasing in the bulldozer trying to crush the car.
And it's very slow, which is kind of funny. Because it's a bulldozer after a car, but it's also in the small space, so no one can drive that fast.
And then the big reveal that I love, because there's a payoff from the withhold. Arnie is in the car this time, for sure. So it's even darker. Well, I mean, of course, it's the climax. You're going to play all your cards. But I just love that it worked on me. It's a great payoff. And they managed to crush the car with the bulldozer, or get it to crash into the bulldozer. I kind of forget. And Arnie flies out the windshield. He lunges forward to try and get Lee, but he's got a shard of windshield glass in his heart, and he dies. And the car sings some kind of song in his honor. Again, I forget it. I think it's the burger choking song again, which was weird.
It was just a weird choice, John Carpenter.
And just as he crushes the car, Dennis, the odometer rolls over to 100,000 or 000. Okay, I didn't get what that means in the vampire, like, you know what I mean? In the vampiric system. I think it means it's brand new now. It has sucked everything it could. Oh, really? Oh, by completely consuming Arnie?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like, I took a life, so she's now like literally alive with full. I mean, it's a sliding scale of magical.
It's somewhat up to interpretation, but yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, hard cut to Christine is crushed into a cube. She's still alive because she twitches little pieces of metal, but it's like, what are you going to do, Christine? You're in the landfill crushed into a cube. You can't really.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Fuck you, Christine.
Drive away?
Yeah. So the cop is also there, and they're like, it's a shame about Arnie, though. And he's like, some things can't be helped. Some people, too. Good line. Decent line. And then even better line, I think. Christine from within the cube plays some song about, I think it's a rock and roll will never die is the lyric in the song. So, basically Christine shaking her fist at them like, I'll get you next time, you meddling kids. And it struck me as very Green Room. And this is why I thought Lee sort of took over as a protagonist at the very end. Great delivery on, God, I hate rock and roll. And
right.
And roll credits. That's it.
And then Bad to the Bone plays, which was the choice of the that's the title song.
Yeah.
It's also the song that we start with. It's kind of the theme of Christine.
It's sort of
Bad to the Bone.
I love it because it's musically saying what that Looper scene says, where he goes, "Don't worry about time travel." It's right. This car is bad to the bone, meaning we do not offer any explanation for why it is bad. That's not going to come. The car's bad. And you have to accept that one thing.
And I kind of, so.
Well, also just got to say what I love about that is, in our Dr. Sleep episode, we sort of X-menified the Stephen King verse, and I just can't get over that idea, man, of Abra and the ghost of, because it's post Dr. Sleep, the ghost of Danny doing X-Files cases. How good would Christine be as an X-Files case? Because then you could say The Shining, because we already saw in Dr. Sleep, The Shining can attach to a place, which is the case in the Overlook Hotel, but it can also attach to a person. Rose the Hat is evil shining, whatever. It could also attach to a car. Why not? And Abra could fight.
I want
anyway,
it to
that's
be a
all.
Procedural too, because I know that there's like Salem's Lot, which
Castle
I think is
Rock.
just about a town, and Castle Rock is like. But Castle Rock
I
has
haven't
a
watched
narrative,
Castle Rock. For all I know, Castle Rock is the show I'm describing, but
it's not.
Okay.
But it does make me ask the question though, because especially when I started thinking about that as a procedural, which would be great. Isn't that what like Medium is? Like I don't know.
Medium.
I don't know. I haven't watched Medium.
I don't know from Medium.
But it feels like that's what Medium's about. But I don't know. It's a good show. You should pick it up. Somebody. Stephen King, probably. Who listens to this podcast. That's that with the Dome. I want to segue to our next section, which we have called Skeleton Crew.
Something in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
This is about the creative team and any interesting thoughts therein. Did you know that Stephen King's popularity was so big at this time that before he finished the book, this was already into production.
Yeah, they jazzed it.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's a book of like, think about that happening now. Think about Harry Potter, that like last Harry Potter or something.
Oh, I mean, those deals are as good as secured, I'm sure, while she's writing. Like J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling wasn't worried they would stop at 4
George
movies.
R. R.
You know
Martin's
what I
probably
mean?
a better example because they actually kind of did that, but it's because they knew that he's a maniac and he takes 10 years to write a book anyway.
Right.
So they're never going to make a show. So they knew that they were going to beat that ticking clock. But it's just weird that it's like, it's such a sure thing.
Yeah.
And this is 83. So he's been, 40 years of just being on top. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he does all right.
The other thing,
He merits a podcast.
it's a podcast. The other thing, so John Carpenter, who's fresh off The Thing, well, not fresh, but like, that was his last movie. That was 82. And
That's pretty fresh. 1 year.
it did not do well, The Thing. It flopped, which is
Y'all are stupid.
y'all stupid.
Audience of 1982.
Who knows? But
Dude, that's a year before Christine. The Thing's even more ahead of its time. Jeez, wow.
The Thing.
Carpenter rules.
Yeah, and I thought this was insane because look at what we did to this poor man. John Carpenter is a hero as far as I'm concerned until, something happens where he's like, actually, he's not a hero, which I'm sure that's probably true at some point in life. But John Carpenter is like just one of my favorite aspects of John Carpenter is he just like chose to like get the fuck out of the way. Like he's like, I'm done making movies. I'm just going to play Xbox and just chill.
Going to play AC Valhalla and tweet about it and shit.
But so anyway, at this point in his career, he was really worried about being a director at all. He wanted to direct so bad, but he realized that like the things that he wanted to make, namely, like The Thing, did so poorly at the box office and critically as well, that he took Christine as a job. And he said, it's like, I took it as a job as opposed to a personal project, which to me is him like understating how much he cared about this movie. I think he has this quote that I found, which is that in retrospect, Carpenter stated upon reading Christine, he felt that, quote, it just wasn't very frightening, but it was something I needed to do at that time for my career.
And a technical challenge.
And it had a pretty good technical challenge.
And he did it. And he did it well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think okay. I can accept that. It makes me a little sad. Like you want every artistic collaboration to have passion behind it. Mm-hmm. But even if it wasn't his most passionate project, he did his job. It worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in order to do that, this is kind of a news. Carpenter brought on Roy Arbogast, who was the guy who did a lot of the super special effects in The Thing. So the team's all back together, and it makes sense that they figured this stuff out. That's it for me on Skeleton Crew. I think there's the rest of this podcast is more served by jumping into the scene work and stuff. What, unless you had anything to add?
Just that they added extra fuck words to get it up to an R rating because it wasn't scary. It wasn't scary enough to warrant an R rating, and they were like,
"That's so cool."
Our Stephen King horror movie can't be PG because there was no PG-13 at the time. They're like, we can't do that, so they added the word "cunt face."
Yeah, they did that's like the most Carpenter thing to do ever. It's also
throw in a cunt face. Yeah, that's what I mean about it's so fitting his name is Carpenter because he always takes the reasonable solution.
Right. Yeah, it's always reasonable. And he's like, it's not that scary. Why am I trying to make it crazy scary? They're like, where's the blood? And he's like, I don't know. It didn't seem necessary. And then they're like, well, now it's PG. We got a PG and no one's going to see a PG horror movie.
Other thing I'll say about the cast and crew is just the absence of Skeleton Crew shit. Like this cast is almost entirely unknowns who
by
never
design.
made a splash again after this, other than LeBay, who we got to mention, skeleton crew wise, is the doctor from the town of Redemption from The Quick and the Dead.
Yeah, our last
recently
Frame
covered
Rate.
on Frame Rate.
Yeah.
And of course, he's the old man in Home Alone. But Quick and the Dead is
Robert's
better
Blossom.
than Home Alone, if I may presume to say that.
Yeah, he's and he kind of kills it in this, right? I thought he did.
Oh yeah, and he has such a unique. He has
such a-
like what I consider the basic old man voice.
But also so kind. Like he's just the kindest old man.
Yeah, he has such a inimitable old man voice that you want to imitate, which makes inimitable a terrible choice of words for that sentence. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's all I got. Bwah.
Bwah, bwah. Well, we should move on to it.
Okay.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float
This
too.
is where we talk about scene works, themes, symbolism, etc. So
You can't spell shitters without it, you shitter. I just wanted to point out first, right out of the gate, that's your Stephen King word watch for this episode. Stephen King has a unique flair for 50s lingo that no one uses anymore. He just has an affinity for it. And every episode we get ourselves in some kind of situation with like a bite my bag or a, hey, you scrote sniffers or whatever. And this time it is shitters is the one that I think is unique to Christine. Everyone calls each other shitters in this as if that's a normal slang in this town. Even though in no other Stephen King book or movie can I find people calling each other shitters. That's all.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's why your word man. Yeah, so the way in which when you watch the thing I wanted to talk to, which is obviously
It's like I have some actual like real shit to talk about. Did you want to get into that?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the big set piece, I'd say, which they kind of do twice. One time they do it very, very well, in my opinion, which is the simulation of the car regenerating itself. And the way in which...
explain. Because I assumed, I assumed it was backwards footage, but then it occurred to me, I don't know how I would crush a car in real time from the inside or like without seeing it. So yes, it's a conundrum and I wanted to delay a little longer before you tell me, but now you may dispel the magic. How the fuck did they do this shot?
Well, the first thing that helps to do this kind of, like, let's say you want to make a car regenerate itself. The first thing you want to do is spend a lot of money on cars. They had 23 cars in this movie, and by the end of filming, only 2 survived.
Wow.
So
they went through
they
cars like
totaled
Milo and
cars.
Otis went through Milo and Otis's.
15% of the budget of the movie was just on the cars. So the way in which they did this particular effect is that they had these numerous Plymouth Furies. They used different actual cars for some of the footage. Like sometimes they used like Chryslers and stuff like that, like in order to, like just be a fake or an insert shot of what would look like a Fury, because there's a lot of similar cars coming off that line at the time. But the way in which they did it is that they designed like plastic versions of the cars so that they could figure out like the puncture points to make the bending and the deformation possible, like, and look good on camera. So they made these plastic things and go, okay, so if we pull that, that's going to like cause this concave in, because like the plastic would just break, but they'd at least be able to examine what would it be like if it were metal. But then what they did is they put these hydraulic pumps on these cables, which would essentially, it was a rig that inverted. Like hydraulics are usually like a push, but they would invert it so that it would essentially suck the paneling and the car body inside the car as opposed to push it out, right? So when they turn on the hydraulics, a lot of pressure would be coming into a single point, which would essentially be inside the car, which would cause the outside of the car to buckle. You follow?
So it is reversed footage.
And then they just reverse the footage.
Woo, it looks good.
It looks really good, though. There's only a few times that it's like very clear that it's reversed. One is like there's a shot of the mirror, the driver's side mirror, and you can see like the dust that expands from when when glass is cracked, kind of like has this weird ramp up because it's backwards. So there's like a slow kind of dispersal of mist and then a quick jolt into like when the break would happen. There's also some times where it just like, I think that the problem with reversing footage with stuff when you break it is that breaking has like an impact, and then there's kind of a buckling or like a blast radius from that break. So when you reverse it, it looks like there's a slow fade into a impulse, but they did a good job.
The tails are slightly, What do you want, man? Come on.
Yeah,
they got no computers.
Like, there's ways around that now with CG, but I just really commend this stuff, and it's just a really simple solution when you think about it, and it also is just, I don't know, there's some elegance to it, and if you watch the sequence, I think it speaks for itself. They use hydraulics a lot in this movie, in fact, and I thought this is once again, the craftsmen behind, men and women behind this film, they were like, well, we got these hydraulics, we're already spending all this money on, like, we have to regenerate this car and this is how we're going to do it. I think they came up with the idea of the hydraulics in general, with how Christine is presented. It's not just like, okay, you go out to make a movie about an evil car. What are some good things? Well, let's make sure we like the color green as like its sentience. So we're going to put like everything that's anytime like Christine is live, we're going to put green in there, and we're going to make it a Plymouth Fury. We're going to do all these choices. One of the choices that they made that they didn't need to make is that usually when Christine drives herself, there's always a driver. They blacked out the windows, all that stuff, which makes a lot of sense. But in order to give the character more emphasis of give the Christine more character itself or herself, they would put little subtle hydraulics in like the back or front tires so that when she starts up, for example, at one scene when she's at the overpass at night and chases down one of the bullies, it's not just the car starts and the lights turn on. It kind of tilts left and right and like becomes alive. It's less like a car starting and more like a beast awaking. Does that make sense? And I think that that's kind of a cool trick to do for a subtle effect that no one probably noticed.
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway as far as craftsmanship achievement, was that the movie showcases a surprising number, more than you even notice at first, or more than you can probably put your finger on until you dig deep and find out stuff like you just elucidated. If you were given the task, it's live action, this is not Brave Little Toaster, make that inanimate object seem like a living, breathing character that's evil, that's the antagonist. Mm-hmm. Damn, they came up with so many tactics, so many clever ways given 1983's limitations to make Christine be alive. Like, what they just really used every part of the car. We're like, what could a car do? I mean, I can think of some stuff like, well, no, even stuff they didn't use, like the exhaust could poison someone. They mention it. That's how Roland died. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of technique went into, and it doesn't surprise me that there's that level of attention to detail to like, I was surprised there wasn't more sound design stuff. Like I wonder if the vrooms of the cars starting up are mixed with a lion growl at all or anything like that. I didn't hear anything like that, but that's the level they seem to be working at. And I really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of the deaths, I mean, it's crazy that he cuts around a lot of the deaths. It's almost that's itself an exercise in like it's about the car and not about like the scene with where like I can't think of any actual like maulings that happen. We cut to the result of it, right? Like,
well, the guy's fingers in the beginning, as
Yeah.
you usually do. It's just like Jurassic Park, right? With the raptor, or it's like the opening scene shows this is what it's capable of, but then you're free to slow burn it for the rest of the movie. Yeah.
he does a weird. Carpenter does this thing where he almost always cuts out, and I don't know why.
It's not his sensibilities. Like, he's not being prudish because he just did the thing where he fucking shows the killings as,
Right.
you know, plain as day.
There's a few times that I think it's spectacular, but the more I think about it, I'm also like, he does it a lot in this movie, and I wonder why. Like, it's almost going out of its way to be PG, and then, which is funny considering the fact that they had to like add the
Amp it
F-bomb.
up.
But like, I'm thinking of the death of the main bully. Buddy
Ripperton.
All we just see is him
Deeply
pursuing.
stupid.
Christine is pursuing him down the highway, and it's kind of nice.
Oh, she just rolls over him very gently, and his flaming body lies there peaceably in the road, right?
No, they cut. He's just running.
That's what I mean. And then it just sort of hard cuts to a profile, and his body is just gently like, oh, I guess he got hit.
Oh, weird. I missed that because I actually made a note.
You see his body lying in the street
you do?
on fire.
Okay, because I thought they don't actually see it. They just mention it later. And
no, they show it, but it's just like, oh, he's a lump in the street.
it's-
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
very like Western where they get
Okay, I
shot and
missed
they just
that.
go,
That's interesting.
oh, and fall over.
did-
And then, but I'll tell you, the death I thought was effective was Jonah Hill bully,
Oh,
because
yeah.
getting hit by a car
Trash compactor.
is only so scary, but making the car slowly rip its sides apart as it crushes you slowly, it was very like when Bernie Mac got killed in Bad Santa. That one really got me because they spent a lot of time slowly, like, you don't die at first, you got to press on the gas to really crush him. And it was a very effective death. But you're right, by and large, it is not Halloween. It's not about the kills.
Yeah, and I
It's
think
about
that,
the drama of the teen narrative, frankly. It follows the drama of like Arnie.
and you can see kind of where, like, I feel like Carpenter's doing that. Like, he has to take a win. Like, he's the kind of guy that I think that, yeah, he's going to go do the job, but he doesn't want to be making this movie so much. Like, it's not a passion project. So he's going to try to be like, yeah, I'm going to do the horror thing that you want me to, but I'm not going to really be happy about it. Like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself into like I'm going to be because it's something he dealt with a lot is the concept of being a horror director, where all you do is you just like bang out these, especially in after the 70s where slasher was king. This is kind of right at the time when horror movies they're popping them out, and it could be considered career suicide to like jump into this very easy way of making money right now.
Right.
And that's why we saw in the late 80s and mid to late 80s a lot of reactions to that horror genre. He's probably trying to find a way to not show the violent death on screen. And it's not
to make it that I am not just a shock jock, essentially.
Yeah. And I think it's a nice touch in a fairly straightforward, predictable story. You wouldn't need to see any particular death, especially ones that you feel most justified in, like the bullies. Like, we kind of hate the bullies. He did his work there. Stephen King crafted it to be like, you're supposed to hate those guys. I don't know. I think Carpenter gets agitated by that stuff. I think I know I would. What else? I think it's a surprisingly efficient third act for all the things that happen. The movie kind of moves. I remember having the effect of, man, that was over. Because this is actually the first time that I'd seen it when I watched it like a week ago.
Me too.
Yeah, because it's just one of the only, which I'm glad I did because it's one of the only Carpenters I have on my bucket list. I just always had kind of gone, killer car. I bet that
well,
sucks.
in this case, it's more of a truck it list, but sure.
So yeah, all the things
have
that
fun.
happen in the third act. It starts with a cut to Dennis, like you mentioned, scratching Darnell's Tonight in the hood of Christine. But even before that, there's the one last scene between like Dennis and Arnie where they're driving down the freeway, and it's kind of got the vibes of like, this is the last. It reminds me a lot, in fact, of that Wire scene with.
Oh, I thought you were going to say what I wrote down, which is it completely reminds me of the final bullies scene from our movie Kill Me Now. It's the exact same vibe as Todd driving around.
Yeah, I was going to say it reminds me of The Wire for some weird reason, between that scene on the rooftop with Stringer Bell and Avon Barksdale, where they're like sussing out like, are you going to try to kill me? Like, what's going on here? Because it's very clear that Dennis is like, just, yeah, I'll have a beer. I'll drink beer and drive around with you. Yeah, you keep talking about your car and you keep mentioning that I hate your car and how much it bothers you. And he just is so agreeable all the time. It basically just crash cuts to, and then he's riding on the hood of Christine Darnell's Tonight. It's just a nice way to cut out of that conversation. Immediately we're in the next day and Dennis is making his move. We don't need a scene between Dennis and Lee where it's like, I think we gotta like intervene. I think we gotta like destroy Christine. There's no further discussion. It's just, oh man, this guy's really gone off the deep end. Cut to,
well, he toasts to death.
Yeah, to death.
Death to the shitters.
To the shitters.
All of them.
Yeah, and the shitters are, I guess, just all losers, right?
No. I think it's the opposite. I think this is it's an incel thing, not intentionally so, but I mean, everyone who torments the losers, like that's something I appreciated about the movie is every horror movie at its core needs to turn the environment against the protagonist. And in this case, the antagonist is the car, and the car actually doesn't have control of the environment because your suspension of disbelief would have to be too great, right? The car cannot sneak. The car cannot be above you in the ceiling and drop down. The car cannot call you on the phone and be like, I'm watching you. The car can only do certain things. So I thought it was incredibly smart, and this goes back to King because it's obviously would be in the book as well, is that it's also a coming of age story, but a dark one. It's not like Stand By Me where he then lives a charmed life with his kids and writes a journal or whatever. It's the version of the loser kid who actually finds the world a pretty tough row to hoe, and like teachers overlook or belittle him. His parents give him grief. And it's that the angry young man, the teen angst, like, rebel without a cause. Literally, they take that shit seriously. The movie takes it seriously. Like you get uncomfortable in the scenes where you're like, yeah, that is unfortunate for this kid. This aspect sucks. The bullying sucks. His parents don't understand. And the school is not giving him the support he needs. Life is hard. So it does a good job of cultivating that, look, we know that the horror monster doesn't control the environment, but just by virtue of the fact that he's a rebellious teen loser, his environment is aggressive and antagonistic. And finding a way to dovetail those themes together, it makes the match more clean than you'd expect. You're like, oh, Stephen King coming of age teen angst does work with the horror of the car, because in both cases, like, and this is what I want to get to, because I'm the word guy, when you let me, my craftsmanship compliment for this film is the dialogue could have been so much more cliche. The dialogue's way fresher than it needed to be. And a line I really like is
adaptations of Stephen King. You know,
yeah,
I think of Dead
and he
Zone
says, why are you obsessed with the car? And he says, she's the only thing I've ever seen that's uglier than me. Dennis says, you're not ugly, Arnie. And he says, I know what I am. So it's the anger of the incel, frankly, the anger of the young white teen man who's like, the world has discarded me. Fuck the world. And I do think that's an effective tactic in the case of this movie.
Yeah, I'm glad you that's a good segue, because I wanted to discuss, because you said, like, when we talked about the shitters, you were like, no, I think that's just the bullies. I think there's an interesting notion at the basis of this, and this is less Carpenter and more King, obviously, about how Christine is kind of an execution or an experiment in addiction or envy. I just have a few questions because, like, Arnie, as we saw, Arnie's stage one is like kind of that loser trope. And then he kind of descends into the rebel without a cause, even at one point wearing, James Dean's like red jacket, more or less.
And it's like, I haven't been rejected by society. I hate society.
Right.
It's that flip.
And then it becomes anyone who is not Christine, basically. All people he sees.
By the end, he means I'm going to kill everyone.
I'm going to kill everyone.
He means everyone.
If whoever gets in my way. And I thought that the way that the story kind of unveils itself is kind of feels like an addiction. And then I thought about, well, actually, it's more like envy is like where all this is coming from. And it actually made me kind of meditate on the concept of like how envy is an addiction, because Arnie does come very arrogant and protective of Christine throughout the movie.
For jealousy, right?
Jealousy.
Not to be pedantic, I just think this is a rare case where it matters. Like, yeah, jealousy is guarding something you have. Envy is wanting what others have. In this case, it's obsessive jealousy.
It is once he's gotten the car, but it's envy, the motivation for getting her.
Oh, I see. Envy of everyone else's lot in life.
Everyone else's lot
frankly,
in life. I don't
Dennis,
get anything.
As emblematic.
This car will make me blast me into the stratosphere. That's the classic trope of the teen
and
drama.
Of course, when you're a young pubescent boy, a lot of it boils down to this car will get me pussy, which he's big into.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he's like, that's the thing that's been denied me.
Yeah. And I wouldn't call necessarily envy or jealousy a drug, but Arnie does start envious of all other teens, as you said.
Yeah.
It's very Carrie-esque, which we'll cover soon, everyone. His life does improve once he gets her. And much like kind of like an addiction, he's angry and protective of her. And they even put a moment where he hurts Lee's hand when he sees that the bullies have smashed Christine. They're like walking into the garage and she's like, ow, let go. And he's just completely laser focused on Christine and her welfare to the point that he's just crushed her hand. And I think that's not Christine doing anything there. That is literally like the aura that Christine creates has created an addiction out of him. There's also the discussion about Roland LeBay, who we're supposed to kind of see as a cautionary tale that almost is like a 1-to-1. This is going to happen to you, Arnie. And it mostly does. Like this car just chews you up and spits you out. And it's because of what I think that the car represented to them, like the best versions of themselves, which is sometimes what I've heard addicts do as well, is that it's how you justify getting into the addiction, not necessarily like I think addicts are usually very aware, but once, they realize that their addiction has kind of taken hold on them, but they'll fight whatever they need to in terms of their justification for doing it. I think that because they place it in front of all other things, in the end, they undermine what they set out to do, which in this case was for Arnie, just to become slightly more popular, to, be known as like a kind of good. He's known as like a good guy, but like
as
he doesn't need to fix everything.
Notes, Arnie's arc is, I would like to be cool and get laid, but I end up becoming so cool that it's deadly. Yeah. I'm too cool for a school in which anyone is alive. I have to kill everyone. Right. I'm so cool, I gotta kill everyone. What a hassle, man.
I also thought that he also sees the relationship with Christine as healthy. In that same scene with him and Dennis where they're discussing.
He's fucking that car, dude. He's sticking his dick in some part of that car.
He eats everything. He has that speech where he talks about how like there's normal love and it just murders and kills and eats everything. All other love is monstrous in his eyes, but his love with his car is pure and he feels unstoppable. Like that's what like, so that's something that I was like, okay, they're doing something here, or King is doing something here. Even green being the color of sentience for Christine, I could see as like a nod to like, I don't know, maybe that's just like, ooh, spooky, but it also could be, envy is typically green, right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go. I don't know.
The green-eyed monster. Although you'd think its headlights would be green at some point then.
That's true.
Anyway.
Because those are more like eyes. But yeah.
The wheels is the feet of the car. Or the hands. I guess 2 of the wheels is the feet. 2 of the wheels is the hands of the car. The engine's the brain or heart of the car. Can we talk about words now? I want to do line roulette. We haven't done that yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because we talked about the filmic craft. Side note, he is obsessed with crane shots in this bitch. Used to great effect. A lot of crane shots. But I want to talk about script craft because that's my jam. And I was just surprised by how there were no lines. There was no dialogue that I was like, that's the most clever shit I've ever heard. But everything was so solid. And there were some choice lines such as, she smiled at me. I want to have deep, meaningful sex with her. I think that's good teen boy shit talk. A line that I hope we can say to each other more often in our lexicon. It reminds me of Kick Rocks. You want a butt, you go out in the junkyard. Can we just start saying that to each other more?
You want a butt, you go out to the junkyard?
You want a butt, you go out in the junkyard.
And that's cigarette, I assume, yeah?
Yeah, and it's telling someone to buzz off and get lost, yeah. So like if I say, help me move, you say, you want a butt, you go out in the junkyard. Kick Rocks. Anyway.
Kick Rocks.
Bad line, but funny line. When Dennis walks up to a chick and just goes, do you like music? That is a terrible pickup line. Do you like music? Then she says, I'm sorry, I can't, meaning go out with you. And he says, why not? Also, you don't do that. You don't ask why not.
Why not?
That's the end of the chat, my friend. She's made her intentions clear.
Do you like music? Why not? Nailing it.
A line I liked. They just don't want me to grow up because then they'd have to face getting old. Has it ever occurred to you part of being a parent is trying to kill your kids? It's just deeper than this movie needed to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I also had that same effect when I heard that. I was like, whoa. I mean,
ooh, that's a little deep. Yeah.
Metaphoric sense. Yeah, you got a lot of points there, but also like, nah. I don't think a lot of parents are like, let's kill this kid.
Not the line itself, but I appreciate the maneuver of the line. There's nothing finer than being at the wheel of your own car except maybe pussy. Because, again, it's like the odometer thing. I appreciated how subtle the planned payoffs were because all that's a payoff to LeBay saying that his brother used to say there was nothing better than that car except maybe pussy. And so you're like, oh, he's turning into Roland. That's what's going on, which I thought was really interesting because it's like, it's a way to make a plot offer. That's what I admire most about the storytelling, the word part of this movie. As you said, there's no scene where there's literally no line where Dennis or Lee say, I think that car is evil. It's elegantly told in a low-key way where they make it look easy, but they're like, we know our way around a story. And most importantly, we know the parts you don't need to hear. We know, like, skip this. They need to know that or they won't be able to suspend their disbelief, but you can skip all that. It's very efficient. It's very smart without being cliche in its structure or in its dialogue. And its planned payoffs are clear, but not beating you over the head. So the script is what I would call low-key solid. And I like it. I like it, man.
Yeah, I thought so too. Or that was my takeaway, is that it didn't get in the way. And there was some nice little lines, more or less. Like, because especially in teen dramas and high school movies, they have the tendency to go real dumb with it. Because I think that's how adults write teenagers.
Right.
And it's not that they aren't dumb or they aren't like severely flawed in their thinking. It's just we don't harp on it. And that's nice because it's like an old hat kind of thing. But yeah, I enjoyed that. One thing that I read is that in the book, the finale isn't Bulldozer versus Christine. It's a septic tank that apparently comes up in the first part of the book, which is a vehicle that they also name after a woman. I forget the name. At the construction yard, that there's a construction yard that Dennis and Arnie work on in the summer. That's how Arnie gets the money to buy Christine.
Mm-hmm.
And so metaphorically, I think this is obviously in King's mind to represent the power of something pure, like friendship, in the final battle. So it's like these two cars named after women are representatives of obsessive love and healthy love.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So like one's a destructive force and one is a constructive force, literally coming from a construction site.
Right.
Both probably women because it's from the perspective of a cis male. Also, it makes sense in this interpretation. One is like fast and a flashy red car, and the other is a slow and steady powerhouse. Like I think that there's a little bit of Stephen King telling on himself there, not in a crazy bad way, but just in the way of like, there's two choices. You burn out or you fade away. It's that kind of thing.
You get
because
the hot red Plymouth Fury, or you get the Crushinator.
Yeah, because I think that there's still a lot of points to be made about obsessive love and healthy love, like the idea of like an obsessive love consuming you. That there's a lot on point there. There's also this idea about like love comes from organically from people, spending time with each other and enjoying each other's company. That is what I mean, I guess, when I am interpreting this as a pure, more friendship based kind of love. And that is what I think the bulldozer in the movie was in King's mind supposed to be. But obviously you cut that out, I think, because you want this thing to be a lean, mean machine, this movie.
A lean, mean, pristine Christine machine.
Christine machine. And you don't need like a prologue, I guess. But I'm sure, I think Stephen King's really good about this. They chop up his books all the time, for better or for worse. And he seems real chill about it.
Oh, yeah, he lets it happen.
And I think that's the right attitude. I think we've said this on this podcast before.
He already made his money.
Yeah, exactly. There's also
actually the real answer, though, which should be said because it's to his credit. He understands that he is a craftsman in one medium and that film is a different medium, which is really cool of him.
Yeah. The last thing I'd bring up is that I caught on the first viewing, and I was surprised. I think my eyes just randomly went to a spot. That when he goes to Darnell's garage, and we see the first shot that we see Christine in, I believe it might be the second, but it's the one where he like honks the horn. In the background, the bulldozer is there. I just thought that was a nice little touch.
Nice, yeah.
That's something Carpenter does a lot, is he likes to layer his shots with like in the thing, something's happening in the background.
But instead of an insert to establish the bulldozer, throw it in the background of a master shot. Yeah.
And he even goes to the point of sometimes, I forget what movie he does it, but like he gives you red herrings, like.
That's what I mean about the elegance. Yeah. Because in the worst case, a lot of filmmakers will throw in a line. They'll let that shit get to the line where someone will be like, all those bulldozers are parked there. When are they going to move those? And you're like, okay, I guess the bulldozer is going to come up. How much more fun to just toss it in the background of a master shot to establish it. So much better.
Yeah. I think he does a really cool. He's good at that. Film was shot in the same neighborhood that he used in Halloween. It's another trivia I found online.
It's fine.
I mean, that's fine. It's just kind of cool. Yeah. And if you're into that kind of trivia, that's that. That's all I got for it.
All right. Let's move it right along then.
And that's our final section called The Stand.
Time to make your stand.
In the place where you live, now face.
It's not going to work.
King.
So this is where we list the King Pantheon according to this podcast. Our usual caveat, this is the adaptations. We're not judging the stories and the novels. We're doing the adaptations and the film versions. And it's kind of, for me, the barometer is kind of, did I enjoy watching the film? And was it executed well? Yeah.
And ties are allowed.
Ties are allowed. And
which makes the whole thing overly complicated, I think. But anyway.
Yes. Yes.
But let's do
Very
it.
complicated.
Yeah. Should we start at the bottom or start at the top? What do you think?
This is one where I don't care. So your choice.
It's right in the middle of his list, people. Let's start at the bottom. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So that makes what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
9.
Well, for me, it's 8.
Well, it's 10. Oh, because you have 2 ties. Yeah. So we've done 10. At this point, we've done 10
episodes.
Episodes.
This is our 10th. Hey,
films
congrats.
in contention. It's 10 films in contention. That's all. Okay. So bottom of the list.
Dreamcatcher, baby.
Dreamcatcher, baby.
I have a fondness for saying that and keeping it there.
Yeah, it's just
good job,
stay
Dreamcatcher.
there.
Stay right there. Okay. Next one up. It.
So this is the 9th. Yep. I put Thinner.
Okay.
The 9th position.
Thought it sucked. Now this is the TV version, not the film version, which we'll get to. Stephen King's It, the proper title. Okay, so right above that, Dead Zone.
Dead Zone.
Great. Then above that, I have Thinner.
Yep. And that's where I have It. So we just, as we learned, we just swapped It and Thinner.
So bumping up another notch, getting better. I have a tie. I think The Mist and Christine are exactly equally good.
Wow. That's really cool.
I think they're really comparable, in fact, in different ways.
Yeah.
What do you have in this slot?
I have Christine as 6.
Okay. Then what's your 5?
My 5 is the tie between Mist and Dr. Sleep.
Okay. My comparable slot is Misery.
Mm-hmm.
So then above that, you must have Misery, right?
Yes, that is Misery.
Okay, above that, I have a tie, Stand By Me and Dr. Sleep. So the notable thing there is how much I like Dr. Sleep. That's very high.
Yeah, like as we've found, the reason that all this is confusing, and we'll probably just figure out a better way of doing this when it gets too long. The only difference is that I put Stand By Me higher than you put Stand By Me. You put Dr. Sleep higher than I put Dr. Sleep. And we also did the same on the bottom end of the spectrum with Thinner and It.
I hate to say it, man, but I think we should, between this episode and next episode, break the ties. I think we should force ourselves to slot them.
I think you're right. Plus,
It
there's
will
more
make the
data
list
points
more
at this
sensible.
point. I
Yeah.
almost was like, well, I like Dr. Sleep, but The Mist is really poignant and Christine is really, like, they're all doing something uniquely that I was like starting to consider a 3-way tie, and I was like, no, that's stupid.
Right.
So
I think we should even break the 2 ways. Yeah.
I think we should probably just so
we'll do that next time.
List.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which will make it even more contentious list.
That's true. But then number 1's The Shining, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
All right.
So far, I don't think it's going to get disrupted.
But so as pertains to this episode, for me, Christine fell right about in the middle. It's of the King list, and you too.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that gives you a vibe. Yeah, I bet a lot of our listeners haven't seen it, and I think it's right at the cutoff point. As we've said so far, we haven't seen a lot of just like rated King adaptations. It's either overrated or underrated. Or if you follow, like, there's a low tier where they tend to suck and a high tier where they tend to be quite good. And I think this is on the low end of the high tier. So I wouldn't call this a mediocre movie because it's in the middle of the list. I would call it a good movie. But the middle of the list is where it happens to fall.
Right. What we said last time is that it felt like, just with the low level of data points that we still have, that there's higher echelon and then just lower echelon. We're starting to get the middle of the pack now, because what I think about Christine is that because of its execution, it is way better than a lot that we've covered on
I
this
still think like
podcast.
on my list, like the gap between Christine and Thinner is still a big gap. Thinner's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that in the higher echelon for me in King, Christine is still just it's about a movie about a car that's
Sure.
evil. So it's hard.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when we get to like, yeah, execution does mean something, but also did I enjoy it? I still put like I still put Mist and Dr. Sleep
As more
above
grabby
Christine.
than okay.
Because like I was like, oh, there's themes that are like, this is really good, and it's kind of a play that means this, this, and this, and I had more to sink my teeth into. Christine is kind of like nailed it, kind of perfect TV movie when you think about it.
Hey, speaking of sinking your teeth, should we do Salem's Lot next time? A lot of people pointed out when I said he's never done a vampire one that's his vampire one.
Yeah. Does that mean we have to watch the whole miniseries? The 2004 miniseries?
Oh, is it a miniseries? I thought it was a movie.
I believe it's a miniseries.
Let's look it up. Oh yeah, American television miniseries. How long? How many eps? It's 3 hours total. Yeah, I could watch that.
All right, we'll watch the 3-hour Salem's Lot from 2004.
There we go. Salem's Lot is next on the docket.
Locked it.
We locked it on the docket, and next time we'll talk it out of our mouth socket. Can you tell
thank
I'm
you,
a
everyone,
rapper?
for joining us.
You still there? Did I drive
I'm
you
still
away
here. I'm
like
just
I
laughing.
eventually do with everything in my life that's beautiful?
This took a turn.
Dark turn.
It's a dark turn.
Bachman-esque.
It's a heel. We've done a real heel thing here.
All right, let's wrap it up.
I don't know how to end this now.
This
I
was
guess
fun.
we just say we love you.
It's true. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.